Hi, everyone. Welcome to another Accessibility Talks or ALI Talks, the monthly virtual meetup where we chat about digital accessibility, inclusivity, and usability. This is the first one of 2025, so welcome. We wish you a wonderful 2025, healthy, happy, and prosperous. So each month we invite a speaker to present a topic, and afterwards we invite the community to ask questions and participate in the discussions. There's many ways that you can get involved in these discussions, and we'll talk about those later. My name is Carrie Fisher. I am your host today. I work at GitHub, and I use the pronouns she, her. Before we dive into the talk, some housekeeping. Let's take a moment to remind everyone that our group is committed to creating a friendly and safe environment for all. So we expect all participants, speakers, hosts, viewers on YouTube, and those commenting on social media to follow the Accessibility Talks Code of Conduct. This applies to community interactions, including events, verbal questions, and chat and any text channels. If you want to know more, you can review the full code of conduct on our website at alitalks.com/conduct. So our goal is to foster that productive dialogue where participants can share and learn from one another in an atmosphere of mutual respect. So thank you so much. Do you have a question? Great. We love questions. And this year we're shaking things up a bit and trying a little bit of a new async format. We're now inviting viewers to submit their questions ahead of each talk so we can incorporate them into the recording session. If you have a question for our speaker, here's how you can ask. During a live stream video, you can type questions directly into the YouTube chat window. But if you're not watching live, you can still post your questions. You can add them to the comments section on YouTube or share them on LinkedIn, Mastodon, or Blue Sky. Just be sure to @ us or include the hashtag AliTalks. That's A11yTalks. Direct links to all our social media platforms are listed on our website. So we look forward to engaging and hearing from you. And of course, we have to give a shout out to our sponsors, including Agile Collective. They're our #1 bronze sponsor of ALI Talks, and we appreciate the support. But we also have individuals, are part of the AliCat Club members who donate monthly to ALI Talks and also one-time donors as well. So thank you so much for your financial contributions. And if you want to see your name or your organization recognized as a sponsor of ALI Talks and help fund these amazing monthly meetups, visit our sponsorship page at alitalks.com/sponsorship to learn more. One more shout out here. If your company uses Benevity for matching donations or gift, now ALI Talks is on Benevity, so you can double your contribution. Just search for ALI Talks and that we should appear as ALI Talks by Midwest Open Source Alliance. All right, all of that house cleaning, I don't know, out of the way, we can go on to our speaker. So I'm very excited today to talk to and hear about the projects that Aashutosh Kulkarni, a senior product designer at Grab, is going to tell us about. But first, I want to know more about how you discovered you were ambidextrous. I heard that it was kind of a sad, funny story.
Yeah. So while I was in 7th standard on Indian norms, so which will be, I don't know, 13, 14 years old, I broke my right wrist. And then I still had to write the exams because, believe it or not, India is not a very accessibility friendly country. So I still had to appear for my exams. And then I started practicing writing with my left hand. And that's when I discovered, hey, it's easy. I can write with my both hands. Of course, the way the handwriting is slightly different, so I can cheat a lot. But but that's how I basically discovered I can write with my both hands. And then I started exploring what other things I can do. So I can use chopsticks with my both hands, spoons, forks, you name it.
Wow, that's pretty impressive. So good to know in case the worst case scenario happens and you break your wrist again, but not in 2025. We're wishing you well and
Thank
healthy
you.
and prosperous 2025. So let's not jinx it. But today I'm really excited to hear about the product and the project that you've been working on called SUCCometer. And we'll get into the name and the Q&A for sure. But this is a new way to measure accessibility. So we're really excited to hear more about this. So the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Carrie. Okay, so hello everyone. My name is Ashutosh, and I'm here with the motto "Done is better than perfect." And why I say that, we will get to that in a moment. So before we get into the subject matter today, let me introduce myself. My name is Ashutosh. It is very hard to pronounce. It's a Central Indian name. So I go by code name Double A, and it's not a common name, but the office that I worked in had multiple Ashutoshes. I don't know how to use the plural form of that. So one of my bosses gave me this name, and now that I happen to work in accessibility and my code name is Double A, that is just a happy accident. I'm a product designer with 15 years of experience under the belt, and I make sure that I make the products usable and aesthetically pleasing. I'm also CPSCC certified accessibility professional. I call myself an accessibility philosopher because I do not actually get into the day-to-day life of accessibility, but I like to ask questions like why certain processes have been set in a certain way. And I focus mainly on mobile apps accessibility because that is a new field. And as of 2000, I believe 20, we crossed the internet consumption. Like half, more than half the internet consumption was happening on mobile phones, and that's why mobile accessibility needs to get into the limelight. And as we are looking at the trend shifts, more and more things are happening through mobile apps: paying your electricity bill, ordering a pizza, wishing somebody a happy new year. So all those things are happening on mobile phones, and that's why it needs focus on all accessibility as well. I also played a role of invited expert at MATF at W3C. Now, this is a group that was tasked to create uh, mobile app specific accessibility guidelines. Currently, we are using WCAG, the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, to evaluate mobile apps as well. But there are fundamental differences in the way we use screen readers on mobile phones and we use screen readers on laptops or desktops. So that was the difference that we found out. And WCAG to mobile guidelines are in the process of making. They will be released pretty soon. And then I've created certain resources. Since I'm a designer first, I like to focus on creating accessibility resources for designers. Mobile accessibility rituals is one of them, where I have come up with prescriptive methods to ensure accessibility of your mobile apps. The second resource that I've created is simplified WCAG for WCAG 2.2 for design folk. This is basically if you are a designer or a design systems a guy or a front end engineer or a content team, the roles and responsibilities have been divided, and you can filter those guidelines based on that. And the guidelines are also written from the designer's point of view. And I recently released something called the EU Accessibility Impact Sizer, which is there is a formula. You need to learn a few terms, obviously. And then once you put those values in the formula, it gives you the monthly loss of revenue directly in euros. That's a scary stuff. And then I also write on Substack. The link will be shared in the chat as well, and it gets published on Spotify. I use AI for that, and I convert all my thoughts into podcasts. Now we go to the main topic, the SUCometer, the new way of to measure how bad your app sucks. I wanted to come up with a name that represents exactly what it is. And whenever I conducted user interviews, they said that, I mean, if there is a missing label, if the contrast was not enough, every participant just said, oh, this sucks. And I just captured that thing, and I said that, okay, I want to call this or call this new framework a SUCometer. So before we dive deep into what this new framework is, let's try to understand what happens during an audit. So whenever a company approaches an accessibility expert, accessibility agency for audit, they run some sample tests and reports. So they will perform an audit on, say, a few screens, few core screens, and then they generate a report of how many issues are there, just to get a sample size of how much work there is. That gets converted to a statement of work, and based on the sample testing, the accessibility experts already know that how deep of water you are in. So they will give you an statement of work, and then the actual testing of apps happens. This audit is aimed towards perfection, so they want to catch the tiniest possible issue, and it's a good thing actually. Also, these apps are tested against WCAG, which I said, which is not a right practice. But although there was no standardized guideline, which is coming soon, and WCAG to mobile will be published pretty soon, and that should be the guideline against which the mobile app should be tested against. And then the report is generated, and when this report is presented to the stakeholders or the leadership of the team, they get into a shock that, okay, when these reports generally contain all the issues that are present in the app, and the number is usually huge, and that is what puts the people into the state of shock. Then we move on to the next part, where how audits are received. uh, like I said, the report contains a number of issues, and these issues are then meticulously converted to Jira tickets, or whatever you are using in your company, one by one. And then these reports do not consider where that issue is. They consider the severity of the issue, but they do not consider where this issue is, or what the issue is, or what trouble is it causing. And we will get to all these nuances pretty soon in the later part of this presentation. And the number of tickets is considered to like estimate the cost of fixing, because engineers have to dive deep into the code to fix all these errors. And when we start estimating the work that is happening based on the number of tickets through story points, usually what happens is it is moved to a later sprint. And SUCCometer is, or this particular framework is aimed towards bringing it back to the main backlog. So to bring it back to the main backlog, this is what needs to happen. First is brute prioritization. We need to understand what needs to be fixed right now in terms of accessibility issue, what can wait a while, and what can be held off till the next sprint. We first of all need to unblock the users. So aim of prioritization should be unblocking the users so that they can smoothly keep using the applications without having to, kind of get stuck. And so we need to remove the blocker issues first and keep fixing the minor stuff later. Then we also need to recalculate the ROI. How many users will be unblocked versus what is the cost of fixing only those blocker issues. And then we have to consume the audits ASAP. All the wise people in the accessibility space have been saying that you need to consume the audit as soon as possible, because it is like a freshly cooked dish. And with that introduction or the background information, let me introduce the SUC score. It stands for suboptimal usability and comprehension score. So usability and comprehension is together is accessibility. Yes, I did a lot of work to force fit that into a name. Uh, the aim of any company or any app is to suck less. And then the ideal suck score is 0. I mean, your app shouldn't suck technically. And if the score is higher, the more your app sucks. So the name itself is an indicator that if your suck score is more than 1, oh yeah, your app sucks really bad. Now let me get into the nuances of what the the benefits of, or what suck score is. It is aimed at prioritization. Now it is not a simple way of presenting the report, but it has the brute prioritization kind of linked inside it. It doesn't just consider the severity of the issue, but it also considers the location of the issue. And what is the location of the issue? We will get that to it in like 3 to 4 slides. It uses multiplication factors called Suckiness index. I honestly do not have a better name for this, so this is a working title. And uh, I will show you the grid of how this suck score is calculated. And what we need to do is address the top left corner, and I'm saying ignore the right corner, but it's not ignore, like ignore for this current sprint, because all the work and all the updates in the IT world happen in terms of sprints. To illustrate an example of how we are going to calculate this, I'm going to use the app EasyJet. It is a widely used budget airline application. It operates in EU region, and with European Accessibility Act coming, these guys are I don't know. These are guys are in deep trouble. But if you want to understand the popularity of this particular app, EasyJet hauled 23 million passengers in just Q1 of 2024. It's equivalent to relocating all the people in Belgium to Sweden and Sweden to Belgium twice. It's just a weird statistics. Then we need to dive deep upon like what are the types of severities. Most of the people who have conducted an audit or seen an audit report already are familiar with this one. A blocker issue is something that brings the user to a screeching halt. I mean, they just can't proceed with this and it just stops working for them. Swipe to complete the transaction, mostly the favorite part of any payment app, like swipe to complete this process. That doesn't work with talkback or voiceover. So that is an issue. The new morphism, the new trend that came and kind of died in the last few years, that had severe contrast issues. So they don't block anything, but in the direct glaring sunlight, it's very hard to use that application. Another classic example is bottom sheets. So whenever the bottom sheets open on the phone, if they do not have a close button associated with it, it is very difficult to close them and the user is stuck because the design pattern says that you tap outside the bottom sheet to close the bottom sheet. And when a voiceover is working on your phone, there is no tap outside. Moving on to the next thing, the next severity is critical. The critical is not actually a blocker issue, but it doesn't stop user from proceeding, but it involves a lot of guesswork and there is a chance of error. So for example, if there is a submit button missing a label after a long form, users may be able to figure it out, but it can easily be cancelled. So all the information that they have filled painstakingly could be gone, or they have a chance of success. I'm currently watching Squid Games. It's 50-50 chance. Why not? Uh, then we come to the major issues, the third category. uh, I'm also a user, I'm also a product designer, like I said, and the flow of the information matters. And as you can do in mobile apps, you can override the visual flow of information, and you can present a virtual view which is easier or makes more sense for the visually impaired people. So in this scenario, if a user has to scroll through an entire horizontally scrollable category list or filters, as happens in trip.com. So if you open the trip.com app, you can see there is a list of cities at the very top of the application. And until and unless you have transitioned through all the cities, you can't go and book your flights. So that is a major issue, right? It is just frustrating for the users, and the users keep swiping. They learn through this mistake, and then they start like swiping somewhere else or tapping directly on the target by guessing the approximate location of it. It would be also considered a major issue if you use confusing copy or long words, and if the majority users of your app are neurodivergent. And then we come to minor issues. Minor issues are like do not hamper the user interaction in any way, but they cause little discomfort, like tiny text, using black text on orange because it passes the contrast criteria, or using purple and green and all that stuff. So it's not very pleasant to use the app as a user experience. It's a very bad user experience. And now we dive into what we mean by the location. Now, location is important to understand. Location is an important piece to understand when it comes to SUCCometer because a lot is riding on where that issue happens. So, first one will be the core flow. A core flow is what is that app built for. But in this world, everybody is trying to be a super app, there are very few, how do I say this, specialized app left. But still we can see that, okay, Skyscanner is for booking flights, or Omni is for booking trains, and EasyJet is for booking flights. So there are dedicated apps that we can look at. So this is the core flow, is what the app does, or the what the organization wants the app to do. So in case of EasyJet, because we said we will be using this example, The flight booking experience is the core flow because that is what the app exists for. And retrieving of boarding pass, because the entire European Union is going like paperless, is another core flow. So this is what the core function of the app is. Moving on to the next type of flow is necessary flow. Now, these flows are needed sometimes for the core flows to function, like recharging your wallet in the middle of in the middle of purchases. Or these are sometimes one-time flows or security and privacy flows, but not part of the core flows. So in case of EasyJet, the necessary flows will be viewing the upcoming trips, like when am I going to board this plane, how many days are left, how many hours are left. And tracking the flights is like when somebody's coming, like I can track the flight. So this is a necessary flow, but at the same time, it's not what the organization or EasyJet wants you to do on their app. And the third type of flow is an auxiliary flow. These are the flows that users don't have to visit unless the circumstances are extraordinary. And like linking a Facebook account for easy sharing. In case of EasyJet, the auxiliary flows would be the voucher balance. So they release vouchers, you need to see the voucher balance, and delayed baggage. Uh, I don't know. I mean, I added this as a joke because EasyJet doesn't allow baggage. So delayed baggage will obviously be an auxiliary flow. And now we come to what I call the Suckiness index. I know the font choice of Suckiness is Comic Sans. It's deliberate. I just wanted to emphasize this on the Suckiness of it. Uh, this is a new concept, and if you see there is a table, you can see on the x-axis and on the x-axis you can see the flows or the locations, which is core, necessary, or auxiliary, and then you can see the severity of the issue. Is it a blocker, critical, major, or minor? And then we get into these multiplication factors or Suckiness indices. So since if there are major or minor issues on auxiliary or necessary flows, that is not going to hamper the suck score much. uh, and then if we oh sorry before we go there, let me explain the story, or let me tell you the story of how I came up with these indices. So while conducting the user interviews, I went on accidentally asking a user that, what would you think, or would you use this application again if we do not fix this issue? And the user responded with, nah man, I'm good. I will use the competitor app. And then it clicked something inside me, and then I started asking this question deliberately to the users, because it is very difficult to explain this entire concept and then ask the users whether you return to this app or not if we do not fix this issue. So I could only conduct like interviews, in-depth interviews with 4 users, because I had like plenty of time with them. But based on those 4 user interviews, these are the highly extrapolated numbers, and these extrapolated numbers are based on the probability of the user not returning to the app. For example, if you find a minor issue in the auxiliary flow, there is a 4% chance of users not returning to the app. If you find a minor issue in the core app, however, there is a 10-11% chance of users not coming back to the app. And then but then I kept on building all these probabilistic factors. Like if there is a blocker issue even in auxiliary flow, there is a 100% chance that the user is not going to come back. If there are critical issues in the core flow, there is a 100% chance the users are not going to come back. If there is a blocker issue in the necessary app, the user is 100% chance the user is not going to come back. And then I found out something interesting. If there is a blocker issue in the core flow, it's not only the user who is not going to come back, is also publicize or badmouth your app, so that other people who rely on assisted technologies or are reliant on other ways to use the application will be driven away from your app. So it's bad publicity right there. And that's why the blocker issue in the core flow gets a suckiness index of 2. That is a 200% probability. Like you use the main user as is, you might lose another user because of the bad publicity as well. So this is the table of what the Suckiness index that I've come up with. Moving on, so how do I consume this particular score? So that is where the prioritization comes in. So we use the model called now, next, later, which is what needs to be fixed right now, what can wait till like next sprint, and what can be fixed later. So deep reads first. So any blocker issues in the core flows need to be addressed first. Any critical flows in the core flow need to be addressed now, right now. And any blocker issues in even the necessary flows need to be addressed now. So that way, you reduce the number of issues that you have to handle. You can focus on the task at hand and make sure that you deliver the fixed version as soon as possible. And that is what I meant by unblocking the users as fast as possible. This is what the brute prioritization comes in. So usually there are very less issues in this section. If your app has a lot of issues in the blocker section of the core flow, you desperately need an accessibility expert on your team. And then these take some effort, like I said. And then after we are done with the deep reads, the with the Suckiness index 2 and 1s, then we move on to the lighter shades, which are next. And then we go to even lighter shades. uh, I have written down this into a blog called how to attack the accessibility audits, and it is available on my Substack. The link will be shared here. Okay, so now moving on to the advantages. Why did I propose this new framework? So this is a single digit to measure the impact. For example, if you look at the Wise app right now, the SUC score is somewhere around 2, because I have found certain flaws in their application. But if you look at trip.com, they are at 38, and there are too many issues. So it's a single digit to measure the impact, and it is fair to the location and the severity of the app combination. So number of issues is a misleading way to keep a track. Like if you present a stakeholder or a leadership member that your app has 90 issues, then they will say that, okay, I will just deprioritize this for this sprint, and I'll get back to this later. But if you say that, okay, you need to fix this 4 issues right now, they might even consider it. And this is based on the Suckiness index. Working title, again, I'm sorry for using the the wrong words. And this like I said, gives the probability of users not returning to the app. And as the member of leadership team always care about is their MAUs and WAUs, which is monthly active users or weekly active users. And if you say that if we don't fix this, there is a 200% chance that the user is not going to return to the app, they will do something about it. This Another advantage of the SUCCometer or the SUC score is it is aligned with the criticality of the issue and aligned with the location of the issue as well. So this gives you the brute prioritization of what needs to be fixed first based on where that issue occurs, so that we can unblock the users really fast. And this is also easiest prioritization. The deep reads you go first, the lighter reads you address later. And once you start addressing the core issues, the suck score drops drastically, and it's a visible impact. So that is a moral advantage, like high moral advantage. Of course, it's a new framework. This is like ideas are built upon ideas, so I am struggling with a few disadvantages as well. So it needs an expert product owner or manager to identify the flow types. Which one is the core flow? Which one is the necessary flow? And what are the auxiliary flows? Sorry. And then it also needs an expert to identify the severity of the issue. Now this is where the accessibility professionals shine, and they can easily identify the severity of the issue. This also like I have already said that it is based on highly extrapolated data of the probability of the users not returning to your app. So more research is needed. Obviously, I'm trying to conduct that, and I will keep updating this course as we move forward. uh, yes, it needs some additional work to do the math, but it's totally worth it because it also gives you the brute prioritization, and it basically breaks down a big task into smaller tasks so that you can attack them one by one. And this is a new framework. This is not a prescribed guideline. Like I said, I'm still working on it. Now that we have discussed all this, let's go into how to reduce the suck score. First of all, target designers. Designers are like have, I don't know how do I say this, but designers have had their way. I mean, they have gotten away with not doing much in terms of accessibility. But a recent study conducted at the DEQUE University, I don't know how to pronounce it, sorry, but a recent study conducted over there, they they found out that if the design team pays attention to the accessibility issues, then they found out the number of issues detected during the testing phase reduced by two-thirds. So basically, 67% of accessibility defects can be addressed within the design phase itself. So we need to target designers, and the success criteria is exactly why we want to target designers, or why designers have been away from these things, because success criteria are exactly what they sound like. They are success criteria, or they are like toothpick tests. Now, toothpick test, if you have never baked a cake in your life, is something when you pull the cake out of the oven, you put a toothpick at the center of the cake. If it comes out dry, the cake is baked. If it comes out wet, your cake needs another few minutes in the oven. But it never tells you how to mix the batter in the first place so that you get the perfect consistency at the end. So design is like where you are mixing the batter, whereas testing is where you're performing the toothpick test. Another one is they're lengthy and boring. If you start reading through all the WCAG 2.2, it's a very lengthy document. If you consider all the success criteria, if you add additional methods and all the testing methods and everything, it's a fairly large document, more than 500 pages. Uh, Another way to reduce the suck score is maintaining the accessibility hygiene. Accessibility hygiene is something that I call better design, better handover, and desk tests by everyone. Desk tests by everyone. So by maintaining the accessibility hygiene, issues occurring in design and handover can be avoided. I've detailed out all the recipes in my book called Mobile Accessibility Rituals, and we can basically, if we reduce the number of issues found in testing by 67%, we can engage the experts where it is extremely necessary. We don't want to call out Neil deGrasse Tyson to explain the fundamental laws of physics, right? We want him to explain the black hole principles and all that stuff. So we engage the experts only when it is necessary. So if you maintain the hygiene, good hygiene, all the label content and scaling issues are handled within the design phase. All all the flow issues are handled in the design phase, and only the critical issues remain for the experts to solve. And that also reduces the cost of audits and the cost of fixing them. And finally, get the leadership buy-in, because and how to get the leadership buy-in? Show them the money. So leadership talks in the language of money and ROI, return on investment. Anytime you want to fix the accessibility issues, it is going to cost money or it is going to cost efforts. And if it is only going to help like 1% of the user, or it is going to help only two users, for example, that's not a viable ROI. And then estimating the impact size in terms of lost revenue, reputational damage, marketing costs, and fines, like fines in the EU region only because EA is coming, and then compare that to the audit and remediation budget. So that's how you can recalculate the ROI and get the leadership buy-in. Now, everything that I have talked about is available on these resources. WCAG 2.2 Designer's Handbook is basically a WCAG translated for designers, and they are filterable based on their roles, and they are filterable based on which disability they cater to. Mobile accessibility rituals is all about accessibility hygiene, and then accessibility impact sizer, which is available on Gumroad as well, which will help you calculate the money matters. And thank you all for listening to me. This is a new framework, I understand, and I'm pretty sure that together we can make this digital world suck a little less. Thank you very much. Over to you, Carrie.
Amazing. I learned so much during your presentation, and I'm excited to ask you some of the questions that the team has been fielding. So, Marky, when you get a chance, post one. And oh, okay, great. So, what version of the WCAG standards does this app use? You may have mentioned it in passing, but I'm not quite sure. And if you do have a standard, is there ability for people to modify that if they're trying to reach a different standard?
Okay, so the beauty of this framework is that this is WCAG version agnostic. So no matter which guideline you're using, I mean, as long as it is mentioned somewhere in the report, as long as you find the issue, if it is in the core level, it is going to have it. If it is a blocker issue in the core flows, it is always going to carry the weight of 2. And if it is
Okay.
if it is a severity, the severity depends on the WCAG standards. Yes, of
Mhm.
course. And then it is depending upon what you want to do. It's literally guidance agnostic. If you're trying to audit, say for authoring tools, you can also use ATAG for this.
Mhm.
Whenever the mobile accessibility guidelines are released, you can use those ones. It's all about where the issue is and how severe the issue is. It's
Okay.
agnostic of WCAG standards.
Oh, that's great to know. Yeah, I think users would really like that too. Like the idea that it's not set to one standard, especially like industries and different countries sometimes have different regulations on top of what CAG or might be a little bit not adverse, but like maybe not the same as the two. So that's great to know. Do we have any other questions? Oh, I think he kind of answered this, but I'm sure you get this asked all the time.
Yes, I do. Yes, I
SUCometer,
do.
it's not very, I'd say, business friendly, or like it's unusual, at least, at the very least. So I do. I saw that you have a definition for what suck means, but how did you come up with even that kind of idea of
Oh,
sucking,
so
right?
whenever there is a unit, I wanted to make sure that it represents what that actually is. In olden days, we used to measure background radiation in something called sunshine units. Now,
Hmm.
sunshine units is a pleasant feeling, but it measured background radiation, which is a health hazard. Let's not do that. So that was my primary objective. And while conducting the user interviews, whenever there was a label missing or there was a contrast issue, everybody, yeah, no, that sucks. and,
Yeah.
and and that basically I carried that forward, that I want to call my score the suck score, or the other words that I cannot pronounce here, uh, cannot say out loud,
Less
sorry.
business friendly, yes.
Yes, very less, even human, not even human friendly.
Yeah.
So and then I went on and started, I used AI a lot, and I made
Mhm.
sure that I wanted to call it the suck score or the other ones. And then I asked AI what could be the meaning of this, and that's how I
Mhm.
landed with suboptimal usability and comprehension, because usability and comprehension together is accessibility.
That's a good point. Yes, and that goes beyond the standards, right, too. So I love that. I love that name. Genius. Trademark it, please.
And it's catchy, right?
It is catchy. You don't forget, that's for sure. All right. So I know we talked a little bit about the EU, right? So how does the team help people prepare and teams prepare for the European Accessibility Act, the EAA, that's coming up about to in June, end of June. It's going to be launched in June 2025.
Yes.
And people, the industries and the governments are going to start dealing out fines and other sorts of repercussions from not being accessible, from having the products be accessible. So, how do you envision this app helping those teams?
Uh, I imagine that fixing accessibility of an app is usually a huge task, right? If you're
Mhm.
presented with a huge number of issues simultaneously, you will be overwhelmed.
Mhm.
So this framework allows you to focus on what needs to get fixed first. And
Makes sense.
if I want to get into the trade secret, uh, the accessibility, the EAA will start imposing the fines if there is a complaint.
Got
Or if
it.
there is a complaint in the core, if there is an issue in the core flow, you're obviously going to get a complaint.
Hmm.
If there is an issue in the auxiliary flow, that can wait. So
Interesting.
this gives
Yeah.
you an insight into what needs to get fixed first to avoid the
Hmm.
fights.
No, and I mean, that's a good question and a good point to make is that, even issues being equal, one's got a greater weight if it's going to have the bigger impact in the flow or it's going to disrupt the flow versus something, again, that needs to be fixed, but you're identifying the one that needs to be fixed first. So this is, I think, a thing that teams struggle with a lot, teams that I've talked to and encountered. So I
This
like that. That's helpful.
Yeah, this framework is basically just gives you like fix the deep reds first. That's it.
Yeah.
That's all you need.
Yeah, I like it. It's very simple in that sense. I'm sure it's super complex underneath, but the visual is simple. That I like that. All right, what do we have? Oh, okay. So you mentioned you were a W3C mobile expert, invited expert, and so you're kind of deep in those regulations and thinking about, it's never been a quote unquote fair for people to judge mobile apps against web standards, right? So
Yes.
there's always been a kind of disconnect and things that never applied, or I kind of think of it as the wild, wild west a little bit when it comes to mobile app accessibility, because there aren't any strict standards, at least that are globally accepted from the W3C. So it's good to know that these things are coming. But I wonder if there's any sort of insight that you could give from your insider perspective of something that might be interesting to users or like unexpected that might be coming up that you think that maybe people will have issues with or have questions about. Like, do you foresee any of that happening, or is it pretty straightforward?
Uh, Basically, the entire process started with identifying which WCAG criteria doesn't make sense at all for mobile phones. For example,
Hmm.
on-board interactions.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
Hover.
on hover interactions, yes. But
Yeah. Yeah.
at the same time, there are people who are using their mobile phones as desktops. The boundaries are kind of very blurred right now.
Hmm.
So, like the team under the guidance of Chanjab the Groot, we have tried to like come up with. I just contributed like very little to be honest, but the people that the real experts, they came up with this translated guidelines that how to translate or how to interpret WCAG so that it can be applied to a mobile native app
Hmm.
correctly. So yeah, the first draft will be released pretty soon. It will be released to everyone. Right now, it is under review, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah,
It'll be interesting. I think it's very much needed in our industry. So looking forward to that work being published soon too. And it really has a one-to-one direct effect on what you're building as well. So it'll see. I'm sure they inform each other a lot.
yeah.
Yeah. All right. Do we have time for one or two more questions? All right, let's limit it to two. So this will be the next to last, and we'll do the best. We'll save the best for last. All right. So question here is, can you give us some recent examples of sites you've used or apps that you've used the SUCCometer on?
I use SUCCometer on trip.com. That is my favorite punching bag so far because on Android, they are missing labels everywhere. I mean, even the tiles that are right in front of you, it says flights. You can read flights, but if you the moment you turn on talkback and you focus that tile, it says, if I'm not wrong, primary entry underscore zero. I mean, there is no
Interesting.
way a user can
No.
interpret that this is where you book flights. You swipe
Yes.
right, you go to something called primary entry underscore one, which is, if I'm not wrong, booking trains. And
Okay.
then you swipe right, you go to three or two, which is hotels and everything. And then you move on to secondary entry level. I mean, after a while, I was like, okay, this is not good.
Did it
What's
break
still
your
going on?
SUCCometer?
Yeah. So every single tile on that particular homepage, there are
Hmm.
8 plus 4. So there are 12 issues right there. And within the homepage, the SUC score reached 27, and I just stopped. It's
Wow.
too much. So
Yeah, to
that
tax
was
the
one.
system. Yeah. I mean, that's good and bad. I know when I've done trainings in the past, like there are a few example pages like that where I love to like show what's not good. Can you have anything of the opposite? Like, have you found any site that is positive and you were like pleasantly surprised at how well it worked?
So I also use this Wise app, Wise
Hmm.
payment
Yeah.
transfer. They are doing a very well. They're doing a decent job in maintaining their SUC score at really low. The only flows that I found issues with was kind of necessary flows. All the core flows are top notch. Everything is just perfect.
That's amazing. Well, that's good to hear. Some positives are out there as well.
Yes.
So we do appreciate your time. Those were all the questions that we had listed. So perfect timing with the presentation and the Q&A. And as I mentioned that earlier at the top, if additional questions come up and from our users in the comments section and social media, we'll be sure to tag you into those conversations and continue that conversation on. So we're excited to see where this app goes, and it's got a lot of great potential. So very excited that you were able to share with us today, especially since it's almost what, midnight your time. So
That's
it's
okay.
pretty late.
Yes.
So we do extra appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm going to close out with a few slides here. So we're always looking for speakers and new voices in the accessibility community. So we make a conscious effort to include marginalized groups and tech and speaker lineup. So if you're interested, please reach out to us at team@alleytalks.com. And for those with IAAP certifications, Alley Talk speakers and attendees receive professional development credits, the CAECs through the IAAP. A lot of letters there for your continuing education. Looking for feedback as we make some more modifications and experiment with different formats. We'd like to get more feedback from our audience members so we can better support you. So if you can go ahead and go to alleytalks.com/feedback and share your positive or constructive feedback, that would be great. And we value your input. I mentioned earlier at the top, different places where we can have these continued conversations, follow, subscribe, all kinds of different places. So we're on YouTube. You're watching this on YouTube, so you know where we are there. But we're also on LinkedIn, Blue Sky, and Mastodon. So please go over there and ask your questions or follow or make suggestions or reach out to us about wanting to be a speaker or sponsor. So with that, I will conclude the first Alley Talks of 2025 and look forward to hearing from you all and seeing you next month. Thank you.